Lingua Latina tutorials with Mr. K, Pensvm D. This video is meant to accompany the Latine Disco or Lingua Latina College Companion texts, both available from Focus Bookstore. Let's get right into the text. I'll point out the grammatical features in this chapter. Begin by looking at line 3, where we have via appia est inter Romam et Brundisium. We see the preposition inter, and we see in the margin note and in the text that inter takes the accusative case, Romam et Brundisium. Most prepositions in Latin take the accusative case. There is the shorter list and very important list of those that take the ablative, ab cum de ex in pro sine sub praecoram, and then a slightly, about double that size of list for the accusatives, which I have memorized as ad apud in per prope post ante inter circum contra trans and super. So here we have inter, and you will see in lines 8 and 14 other examples of prepositions that take the accusative. Here in line 8 we have prope Romam, near Rome. Ostia is near Rome. And in line 14, see circum oppidum. Also circum oppida muri sunt. There are walls around towns. Circum oppida, accusative plural here. So what do prepositions do? It's one of the parts of speech that show position. So think about them as prepositions. And so notice that inter tells you between, prope is near, and circum around. So all of them, imagine like a box or a fixed object, and then the prepositions giving you locations and positions around it, or motions around it. The next feature in the text I want to point out is in line 18. And here we go. At line 18 we see ab oppido tusculo ad vilam Julii non longa via est. So we have from the town of Tusculum to the house of Julius, the road is not long. These two prepositions, ab and ad, show a very primal, very basic feature of the ablative and the accusative case. And that is motion away from and motion toward something. And you can see that indicated in the margin note here, that when you have ab, think of the ablative. Ablative, actually, ablative starts with ab, and it's the meaning of the case itself is born away from. It has the idea of movement away from, which we call the ablative of separation. And so from the town, ab oppido, to the house, ad vilam. So ad, the opposite of ab, takes the accusative case to indicate motion toward. So think of accusative as ad-accusative, and ablative is ablative. So from the town to the house. The next feature in the text that I want to point out is in lines 34 to 35. And we have these two interrogative particles, unde and quo. Unde venet Julius, ab oppido venet. Quo it Julius, ad vilam it. So what we see in these two particles is that unde means where is Julius coming from, so where from where, or whence. And the answer you expect for an unde question is ab, from somewhere. Where does Julius come from? He comes from the town. Quo is the opposite. We see that in the margin, that quo is the opposite of unde. quo is asking the question, to where? So to where is Julius going, or where is Julius going to? And we expect the response to a quo question to have ad in it, or a motion toward accusative. Ad vilam it. So in short, unde expects an ablative, motion away from, and quo expects an accusative, motion toward. The next feature I want to point out is in line 47. And we see in the margin tusculi, and as we read this line, we see medus tusculi non est, neque Romae est medus, sed in via Latina inter Romam et Tusculum. So medus is not tusculi. We translate this as in Tusculum. And then we see and medus is not in Rome, Romae, but he is on the Via Latina between Rome and Tusculum. So these two words here, Tusculi and Romae, are in a new case that is called the locative case. You haven't seen that yet, but it is identical with the genitive. It gets its own name, though, because it's translated differently. And it tells you the location, which is where it gets its name, locative, the locative or locative, the location case. So Tusculi, in Tusculum, Romae, in Rome. We add the preposition in English, in, and these show up all the time in Latin, and they're usually going to show up with the names of towns. There's a few other exceptions, but normally town names will be in that case, the locative case. The next feature I want to point out is in lines 78 and 79. So if we go to line 78 here, we have medus Lydiam amat et ab ea amatur. So Medus loves Lydia, and he is loved by her. This is an important new verb feature in this, which is called the passive voice. In Latin, we've talked about before, every verb has 5 main characteristics, which are person, number, tense, mood, and voice. Voice can be a little bit tricky at first if you haven't studied it before. Voice has nothing to do with when something is happening, so you present tense, both of these verbs are in present tense. They both have to do with loving right now. That Medus loves Lydia, and he is loved by her. The difference between these two verbs is simply what's happening to the subject. So is the action going out from the subject, or is the action going back toward the subject? So in the first verb, we have Medus loves Lydia. So the action of Medus, the subject, is going out. His love is going out. And in the second example, amatur, the subject is still Medus, but now instead of action going out from him, love being emanated from Medus, it is coming back at him. And he is loved. The love is coming to him by her. Whenever you have a passive, and you'll learn the passive ending shortly of ar, ris, tur, mur, mini, untur, whenever you have a passive, you expect an ablative of agent, ab ea, by her. He is loved by her. The next feature I want to point out is in line 79, same line, but I wanted to give you the specific name of this ablative. It's called the ablative of agent. He's loved by her. Called ea would be called the ablative of agent. The last feature of the text that I want to point out is in line 91. And it is in this line, Lydia verbis medi delectatur eumque salutat. So Lydia is pleased or is delighted by the words of Medus and greets him. So here we have verbis, an ablative with no preposition. by the words have made us. You're going to find, as we move through the text, many other examples of ablatives especially that do not have prepositions, and they all have special names. And this one is called an ablative of means, or an ablative of instrument. It's the thing by which, and that's often how you could translate it. We translate with the preposition by, that he is pleased by the words of Medus. You need to know the special name of these different names of these different kinds of ablatives. So if somebody asked you, why is where bis in the ablative case here, you would answer that it is an ablative of means, because Lydia is being delighted by those words, by means of the words of Medus. Okay, and that is the end of Pensum D.